we will see the consensus protocol of the blockchain, and finally we will look at the smart contract of the blockchain. So we won't be coding anything today. We will be looking at one specific code, but that would be it for today, just to understand the basis of smart contract. So if you want to learn more, then please wait till the end of the session where we will give you a feedback form. Okay. So yeah. So now blockchain definition. Okay, so blockchain is defined as a continuously growing list of records called as blocks, which are cryptographically linked together. Okay, so this let's break this definition into three parts. First, let's understand what this continuously growing list means. So this list is nothing but similar to that as you use in Python. If you are already familiar with Python, you might have already used this list at least once or twice. Or if you are not familiar, then you might have studied in SPA the array, right? So imagine this list similar to that of an array with having a data type, as you need to specify a data type in SPA or in C programming language. As you can see here, I have mentioned the data type, that is the user defined data type, as a struct block, and I have created an array called as blockchain. So I have just done these two steps, and I hope everyone understood this. So there is some data fields in it. Now we will look at it in some time. So yeah, so that was one part of the blockchain. Now the continuously growing means, imagine this, that is the I have specified here as 100, right? So this means that maximum 100 data elements can be present inside this blockchain. So imagine that this is infinity, that is it does not have any upper bound in it. So this means that the blockchain will be ever growing, that is there is no upper bound to it. So that is what that continuously growing list of records means. It is just an array of an indefinite length. And also cryptography. Cryptography here, as it suggests in the definition, cryptography means you take an input and get an output using some algorithm or some formula, and this output that is generated is totally unrecognizable from the input. So no one could be able to predict what the output is actually going to be. So that is what cryptography means. Now linked together, we will see it in some time. Okay. So I hope everyone understood the basic definition, which just tells us that blockchain is nothing but an array of data type struct block, and having indefinite length, having no upper bound. Okay, so I hope everyone understood this. So now each block has some data items present in it. Now, as you saw here, I have mentioned some data items called as string, which is nothing but a data, that is the data that we are going to store in it, the hash and the previous hash. So, and I have mentioned these three things here also. So the data is nothing but the data that we are going to store. For now, imagine this data as to be hello world. Okay, so this is nothing but a string called as hello world, and this hash is a hexadecimal value. This hash is a unique identifier of the block. So this is unique. So this is unique, and it is a hexadecimal number of 64 characters. Okay, so this 64 characters comes when we generate this hash using the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. But for now, just imagine that this is a hash that is also a data field, and this is a previous hash that is also a data field, and yeah. So let me just show you how this block looks like. Okay, so I've already opened this demo. Okay, so I hope everyone can see this website. So this is nothing but a demonstration, that is just a visualization of how a block looks like. So as you can see, here is the block number. This is nothing but actually the index of the block. But yeah, index of the block plus one. So here is one, and I have mentioned the data as hello world, and for now, don't consider this nonce value. So as I have not told you what this nonce is, for now, ignore this nonce. This nonce is not existing here. Ignore this. Okay, so now what is happening is this block is taking the block number, the nonce, but ignore it, the data, and it is generating a hash. So as you can see here, the hash is here. So yeah, so I hope everyone understood this, how the block looks like. This is how a block is looking like. So now you might ask me, where is the previous hash field? So as this is just a block, uh, and it does not has any next block or any previous block present in it. So that's why the previous hash field is not present here. So if I go here, that is in the blockchain demo, that is in the demonstration of blockchain, you can see that there is a previous hash field. And as you can see, the first block, that is the first block of a blockchain, has a previous hash field that is all zeros. That is from the 0th index to the 63rd index, because it is 64 characters long hexadecimal value, right? So from 0th index to 63rd index, each and every character is 0. And yeah, so this first block is called as the Genesis block. Okay, so that is also a general fact about the blockchain, that the first block is called as a Genesis block. So I have put some data. So this is some random data. That's it. So I hope everyone understood what a hash is. It is a hexadecimal value, and it is 64 characters long, because we are generating this hash using the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. And now you as you remember this cryptographic link we mentioned in the blockchain definition, this hash and the previous hash form the cryptographic link, because each and every block in the blockchain will have these two fields, right? So they are actually linking the block with the previous block. So this is what the cryptographic link we were talking about. As you can see, I have mentioned some of the data items that are usually present inside present inside a block, and I have also added a new data item called as the timestamp, which is nothing but the time at which the block was created and added inside the blockchain. So, and you remember this data that we assume for now to be as hello world, and this timestamp, the time at which the block was created, the hash that we are generating using the data, the timestamp, the previous hash, and other things that are present inside the block. And the previous hash, that is the hash of the previous block. Okay, so now I feel that every time whenever we learn a new thing or new technology, it is best to learn with an example. So let's take an example. So assume that there is a guy named Bob who just purchased a new house from Alice by paying 100 coins. And after purchasing that, he got a deed. Okay, so he gets a deed, which is nothing but a written form saying that now this house of this address belongs to Bob. Okay, so what he has to do now is he has to go to the government office and he has to register this deed to them, so that the government will be keeping a record of all the properties and who all own it and stuff like that. And this happens usually. So if now imagine now if Bob is living in a third world country where each and every government document is stored in written form, that is in a book, using some registers or something like that, where each and every detail is stored using is written using pen. Okay, so what will now this is very dangerous, right? So if the whole place burns down, then all the important documents that were there inside the government office will also go down with it. And if someone comes in and tears some of the papers or alters it from the book or the register, then also it is very harmful, because now suddenly Bob won't be the owner of his house if someone comes in and changes the name of Bob to his own name, right? So it is not that simple, but it can be done very easily. But so these are some of the issues using the conventional method. But now if we decide to actually digitize these documents, so then also there will be some problems. Like suppose if this deed is in a PDF format, so now where will we store this? Like where will the government store it? If the government uses a centralized form, then also there will be some problems. And they also should take care that no one should be able to tamper that data. That is, no one should be able to access that PDF file where the deed of the Bob is present, and no one should be able to change it. Like so, these are some of the issues that are faced, uh, and blockchain can is able to solve these issues. Okay, so I have also mentioned some of the other use cases of blockchain, that is the healthcare, the voting system, and some other transaction wherever the transactions are involved. And also you might, if you have like participated in some hackathons or something like that, then you might have come across this supply chain management topic a lot. So this topic is becoming very famous nowadays because and it requires blockchain also. So if you have come across, then you might be knowing what I'm talking about. So now, as we talked about some of the problems, we will see one by one how blockchain is able to solve this. Okay. So yeah, so first we will see the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. So before going into the hashing algorithm, let us just recap what all things we know about a hash. So the hash is a hexadecimal value. So hash is a hexadecimal value, and it is 64 characters long hexadecimal value, and it is a unique fingerprint for a block. Yeah. So I have mentioned it here. So it is unique for each and every block. So these three things we know about the hash till now, and and also we know that the hash is generated using the data that is present inside the block, the previous hash, and the block number. Okay, so we generate the hash using these three things. Now what we actually do is we take all these things, we put it inside the hashing algorithm, and then we get the unique hash. So yeah. Now let's see the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. SHA stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm, and 256 because it, as you know that it is taking 64. It is an hexadecimal value of 64 characters long, right? So if we convert it into binary, it will be 256 characters long, because each character of hexadecimal corresponds to 4 binary characters. So 64 times 4 is 256. So that is nothing but 256-bit storage space, that is the hash taking when we generate the hash using the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. Okay, so now there are some of the requirements for a good hashing algorithm. So the first one is one way. One way means you can get a hash from any input, but you cannot get back the input from the hash using backtracking or any other method. For that method, you cannot get back the input that you put from the that you put into the hash, and you cannot get back the input from the hash. So remember that. So that is one of the most important requirements for a good hashing algorithm. Second is deterministic, which means that if you pass the same data again after some time, you should get back the same hash. That is, the hash should not be different after every time you put the input, same input, you should not get different hash. You should get the same unique hash. Third is the fast computation. Fast computation is nothing but the process of getting the hash from the hashing algorithm should be computed very quickly. And the fourth is the avalanche effect. The avalanche effect is nothing but even if you change a single bit of input, even if you change a single bit in the input, you should get a totally unrecognizable output. That is totally unrecognizable hash. No one should be able to predict from the input what the hash is going to be. Okay, so now let's actually try this all these requirements that I just mentioned. So first I type Anand. Okay, so I've typed my name here. So now I have got a hash for my name data. I hope everyone can see this website, right? This website is nothing but in its backend, it is running the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. So as soon as I put some data here, it will compute the SHA-256. It will pass it through the SHA-256 hashing algorithm, and it will display the data. That is, it will display the hash. So now as I have put the data here called as Anand, now I am getting the hash as 5F4D in the beginning and 825F at the end. So let me just take this hash and put it, I have control C and control V here. So as you can see, I got a different hash for the hash that was generated using my name. So this means that there is no way that I'm going to get back my input from the hash. Okay, so this is demonstrating the one-way requirement of the hashing algorithm. And the second was deterministic, that even after some time, if I put the same input, I should get back the same hash. So let me put back the same name, Anand. So as you can see, the hash that was generated previously was beginning from 5F4D, now also this, and ending from 8 to 5F, and now also this. So this means that the hash that was generated previously and now is the same, is one and the same. And yeah, the third one was fast computation. It is very easy to show this. So as soon as I type even a single letter, the hash is getting generated within a second. So this is how the fast computation of the hash is. And finally, the avalanche effect. So now, as you can see here, the data is Anand, and the hash is 5F4D and 825F. So if I put a full stop here, the hash that is generated is totally different from the hash that was previously there. So this is the avalanche effect, because there is no way I'm going to predict what the hash is going to be from the input, right? So this is the avalanche effect. Now I have one task for you guys. What you have to do is, I'll be posting this link in the chat box. You have to go to this site and type your own name here, and whatever the hash that is going to be generated along with that and the name that you posted as the data, copy it and paste it in the chat box so that everyone can see it. Okay, so everyone go to this site, and we will wait for 2 to 3 minutes till everyone is done. Oh, great. I'll wait for a few more responses, one or two, and then we'll move ahead. Awesome. Okay, so now we'll move ahead. Most of you have typed it. So, so I hope everyone understood this basic SHA-256 hashing algorithm and how it works, what are its requirements and all. Okay, so yeah, so this avalanche effect is very important, right? So in the hashing, it should be present inside the hashing algorithm, and we'll see it in some time why it is so important and why it should be present, like definitely present when we are studying mining. Okay, so yeah, so now the immutable ledger. Now, immutable means not changeable. Many of you might have learned this stuff while you were in second year when you had Java. or if you know already Python, then you might be knowing that tuples or tuples are actually immutable, right? So immutable is nothing but not changeable, and ledger is nothing but a book where you keep all your records and all your data that is important records are present. Okay, so a ledger is nothing but a book where you keep all your records. So our blocks that are present inside the blockchain are immutable, which means that no one can change the data that is present inside our blocks. Okay, so let me just demonstrate you how the immutable ledger actually works. So you might be getting confused, but I want you to pay a. First of all, let me just tell you that there is a bug in this blockchain, this demonstration. So, firstly, I will explain you how this works, and then I'll tell you what the bug is. Okay. So first, this is the demonstration of a blockchain. Okay. So each and every block will have a block number, the nonce value. Ignore this for now, but it will have a nonce value, the data that is present, any data, random data, I have put it here, and the previous hash. For the first block, it is all zeros, and the hash. Okay. So as you can see, there are 5 blocks present inside this blockchain. Okay, there are 5 blocks present inside this blockchain. So now, suppose I am a hacker. Okay, so I want to actually make a change inside this first block. So what I'll do is, if I make this change from Bob to Anand, what will happen is this hash value will change. As we just saw in the SHA-256 demonstration, that even for a slight change, the whole hash is changing. Like even for a full stop, the whole hash is changing. So similarly, even if I change this name of sender from Bob to Anand, then this hash will change. Right? This will obviously happen. So as you can see that as soon as I change the name of sender from Bob to Anand, the hash got changed. Now this means that the previous hash field, which will be consisting of the hash of the previous block, will now not be matching with the hash of this block, right? So the cryptographic link is actually broken between these two blocks. And suppose if I try to like copied this hash from this block and pasted it here, so then the hash of this block will be or changed, because the hash is actually generated using the previous hash, right? So this will also change. So this means that the cryptographic link between these two blocks will change. So this means that if I make a change in the first block, I have to make a change in each and every block preceding that block. So this is what we learned from the immutable ledger. So this is actually impossible to do. So this, if I make a change in first block, then I'll have to make a change throughout all the blocks, right? So this should happen within a minute, like maximum a minute. If you are able to complete it in maximum minute, then also there are more security issues that you won't be able to like hack into so easily. But this is what the immutable ledger means, that if you are changing in one block, you will have to change each and every block, and which is quite impossible. So that's why our blocks are called as an immutable ledger. That's why a blockchain is called as an immutable ledger. So I hope everyone understood this, or if you have any doubt in this, you can ask me right now. So or else I'll tell you what the bug is. So here the bug, what actually is that as soon as I changed the name from Bob to Anand, what happened is the previous block also of this block number 2, got changed to the hash of this. This does not happen in real life blockchain. The blockchain will still be pointing to the one where the data sender had the Bob. Okay, so I hope everyone understood what the bug is. This change does not happen so quickly. So that is what the bug is. If anyone has any doubts here, you can please ask me, because this is some important concept that you all need to know about the blockchain. If you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and ask me, or else we can move ahead.
Can you explain the bug again, please?
Yeah, sure. So as you remember that what I told is the cryptographic link breaks between these two blocks. So in real life, that is when you code the blockchain. That is when you are coding the blockchain. You this change as soon as I okay wait. So now the sender is Bob, right? Now the sender is Bob and the hash is zero zeros, that is four zeros and B40. And the previous hash field is correct, that is 000 and B40. So remember this hash 000 B40. Now I am changing this. So I changed this data in this block. So the hash of this block is going to change. This everyone knows, right? As soon as I change the data in this block, the hash of this block will change. But in this like in this website, there is a bug that is as soon as I change this, the previous hash field got of this block got changed to the one that is present now. It should be actually 000 B4C that when the Bob was there, right? When the Bob was there. So let me just copy this and I'll paste it here. Okay, so this should be present here when I'm making the change. Yeah. So as you can see, the 4FC is coming here, but that should not happen. This hash should be present in real life blockchain. That is when you are coding the blockchain, this blockchain would still be present here. So that is that is why the cryptographic link is breaking. Oh, was the doubt clear?
Yes, very. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so now let us see what a distributed peer-to-peer network is. So the distributed peer-to-peer network is a networking style. Okay, it is just a networking style where we have a set of computers which are interconnected to each other, and each computer in the network is connected to every other computer either directly or indirectly. And this figure, as you can see, is actually self-explanatory. And also you need to remember that each computer in this network, each and every computer will have a software or an application which will be having both the client and the server side code in it. So okay, so let me explain it to you using an example. So everyone uses BitTorrent, right? Everyone has must have used BitTorrent either once or at some point of your life, right? So BitTorrent uses this networking style. So what happens when you actually download is, suppose this guy wants to download a file that is present in this person's computer and in this person's computer. So he's using BitTorrent, and everyone in this network has the BitTorrent downloaded in their computer. So this person has requested to download a file that is present in this person's computer and this person's computer. So he will send a request to each and every computer that he is connected to. So these computers will actually check if they have that file. If they don't have, then they will send send the request to the computers they are connected to. So this will happen. So they are sending the request to these computers. Now this person has that file that he requested. So he will send the file bit by bit. So this person will send the file bit by bit to this computer and the download will be completed. So now as this person requested the download, he was the client, and as these two person send the response of the file, they are acting as the server. Okay, so each and every like computer will act as a server or a client depending on whether they are actually requesting a download or like responding to give the download to someone else, or like uploading the document. So this is what the distributed peer-to-peer network is. I hope everyone understood this. So now that we know what distributed peer-to-peer network is, let's see how it works in blockchain. So for this, I need to go back. 1 second. I'll erase all this. So the blockchain. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you that blockchain uses the distributed peer-to-peer style networking to like actually blockchain uses this, and each and every person will have a software which will have the copy of the blockchain inside them. So this means that each and every person's computer will be having the same blockchain copy. So this is, assume that this red color block that I'm making is actually a blockchain that each and every person has. Okay, so now if this person created a new block and added it inside the blockchain. So now this person created a block and added it inside the blockchain. So what will happen is all these computers will be communicating with each other continuously. So they will see that a new block has been added inside this person's computer. So they will quickly add it inside their own block. The software will be doing it. No need to like no user will be doing it. The software will be doing it by itself. So as soon as it sees, it will this block will be added in this person and this person, and similarly each and every person's computer will have that block that was added by this person. So this is how the each and every block traverses throughout the network and gets added to each and every person's computer. Okay, so this is how the blockchain actually works. And yeah, so this each and everyone is having the same copy of the blockchain, and each and every one, if a block is added, this is how it is going to traverse, and everyone's computer will be having it. So now let me show you how distributed peer-to-peer network adds another layer of security. So as if you remember that immutable ledger, in immutable ledger, I showed you that the cryptographic link breaks if I change some data here. So distributed peer-to-peer network means that I will have the same copy in peer A, in peer B, and in peer C. So I will have, so in this demonstration, I have 3 computers that have the same blockchain and have the same data in first block. Okay, so if I make some change in this block, that is if I change this block to Anand, so now not only I have to make a change in each and every each and every person's computer, like sorry, each and every block after this block, that is if I made a change like Anand, then I will have to make sure that each and every link is also restored back. But not only this, but I will have to make a change in more than 50% of the computers present inside the network. Then only my change will be visible and like accepted. Else, because as soon as I make a change here, these 3 computers, that is peer A, peer B, and peer C, will be communicating with each other, right, continuously. So the peer B and peer C will tell the peer A that, bro, there is something wrong inside your blockchain. So please remove this and add the blockchain that I am providing to you. So he will realize that there is some mistake in its own blockchain, and the PRA will remove this malicious blockchain and copy the real blockchain. So if it was possible for me to change the same and change the same hack, that is from sender, I am making this Bob to Anand. If I made the same change to this peer B also, then at the same time, this change should be happen. And mostly the computers that are in a blockchain, that is the peers that are in a blockchain, are like separated from countries. So it is very difficult to like even think about doing this thing. So even so If you want to actually make a change, then you will have to make a change in more than 50% of the computers. This is the main point. And it is near impossible to do it. It is near impossible to even make complete change inside the same blockchain, that is inside the same computer. So talking about doing the same thing in different computer, forget it. So now let us understand this mining. So as you can see, I have put an extra field called as nonce inside this block. So this nonce is forms the basis of mining. So and we have been seeing this nonce from each and every demo, right? So this nonce actually forms the basis of the mining. So what happens actually is whenever the blockchain developer, that is the person who is creating a blockchain, who created the software for the blockchain, he will set a target for a hash. Okay, so this target, if it is not met, just imagine that a target is set for a hash, and if it is not met, then the hash won't be accepted, and the block won't be added to the blockchain. Okay, so this mining actually forms the basis for adding the block inside the blockchain. So this is what mining is, the process of adding a block to the blockchain. So how it is done is, like as you can see here in the code snippet, I have initialized this nonce value to 0. So nonce is just a number, just an integer number, having like it has a limit, but it is very large, like long int. Like you can imagine this nonce to be a very long number. And yeah, so I have initialized this to a 0. And then what I did is I created a hash using the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. And to that, I simply passed the previous hash, that is this, the nonce, this, and the data that is present here, and the block number, that is just the index. Okay. So yeah, so now as you can see here, I have set the target as 4 leading zeros in hash. So as you can see, 4 leading zeros means the starting 4 characters of a hash, of the hexadecimal hash, should be 0. And if it is not 0, that is if it is not meeting the requirement, that is if it is not satisfying the target, then we will increment the nonce and we will calculate the hash again. So using the same method that I did here. So I'll calculate the hash again and I'll check it again. I'll repeat this until and unless I'll get the hash that is meeting my target. So this iterating, that is continuously incrementing the nonce and calculating the hash, is nothing but the cryptographic puzzle that I mentioned here. So this forms the basis of the mining, that we are actually setting a target and we are iterating and incrementing the nonce until and unless we get a hash that is meeting our target. Now you might ask, why do we need to set this target right in the first place? This target is actually creating another level of security so that no person can directly come in, like if it is a public blockchain, if it is available to each and everyone, no one should be able to come in and directly add some, like anything inside the data, right? No one should be able to add any non like useless data inside the blockchain. Only valid data should be present. So that's why we are setting a target, and we are actually in like introducing nonce because we cannot change the data. If we change the data, then it will lose the whole purpose of being the immutable, right? And if we change the previous hash field, then it will, like, the cryptographic link will break. So we have to introduce a new concept, a new data item called as nonce, which is number used only once. And this nonce, we are incrementing it so to get a hash. So this is what the basis of mining is. So I hope everyone understood what this mining is, why we are setting a target and stuff like that. So, and also like this once, like it is not usually this simple. This target is actually like 10 leading zeros or some zeros in between in some other place, like something like that. It is actually very difficult to solve, and it takes a lot of computational power, lot of resources, electricity and time of the miner who is mining the block. And hence the miner is will get a reward for that once the block is uh, created and added inside the blockchain, and also it should be accepted by the blockchain. So what this accepted by means, we will see it in the next slide. Okay, so just now we saw the target, right? So this we will see the flowchart is also showing the similar thing. So we will create a new block, that is we will propose a new block. We will combine and create a hash. So this hash is created and we will check. So this check is nothing but the 4 leading zeros thing. And then if the target is not met, that is if there is no 4 leading zeros, then we will increment the nonce and create the hash again. And if we are getting the hash that is meeting our targets, then we call it as proof of work. Now this proof of work is because the miner who got the hash is using his resources, that is computational power, just as I said just now, the electricity and time and many other resources. So he is actually putting in efforts, he is actually putting in some work to do to generate this hash. So that's why this hash is called his proof of work. And this proof of work is nothing but the consensus protocol. So this proof of work is the consensus protocol of blockchain that is widely used in most of the blockchain platforms. Now, like Bitcoin uses this proof of work consensus protocol, and Ethereum is also currently using proof of work, but it is changing. That is, it is transitioning from proof of work to proof of stake. STAKE, stake. So proof of stake is nothing but it has additional features, that is it has proof of works properties but some additional properties. Now we won't be going into much detail about this. So just remember that Ethereum is now going from proof of work to proof of stake. And these are nothing but, this is nothing but the consensus protocol of blockchain. Now there are two challenges in specific. So these two challenges are when an attacker attacks a block at the end of the blockchain. So okay, so let me just show you this, how this actually works. So as you can see here, so imagine that this has not happened. So what actually happens here is, suppose this is the last block, right? So suppose if an attacker, that is me, I am an attacker, I am a hacker, I came in and I did some malicious change inside of this data. Suppose that I'm putting here some data called as Anand. Okay, there was no data present. Now I added some data here. So I did some malicious change. So now I'll have to, not only that, I don't have to like worry about the cryptographic link breaking because this is the last block, right? So I don't have to worry about that, but I do have to worry that I have to make this same change in more than 50% of the computers. That is what the distributed peer-to-peer network blockchain is providing us security. And also you need to remember that there is a lot of set of rules that we need to follow while or adding a block. So it is not as easy as you think, like changing the data from Anand, like from nothing to Anand, right? So it is not as easy as that. So you need to remember that. So we'll not go into detail of what these rules are, what how this works and stuff like that. But remember that there is a set of rules. Plus, you need to make this same change in more than 50% of the computers at the same time, which are located at different countries all over the globe. So you need to make that change if you want to like make your change visible inside the blockchain. Okay, so now the second. Now, as if you are like, I hope you understand how this first challenge is solved. Now the second challenge is competing chains, which means that two-person, like two-person at the same time inside the blockchain are creating a block, that is two different blocks, and adding it inside the blockchain. So suppose this person, suppose the red denotes the blockchain that is already present in each and every person's computer. Okay. So now this person added a blue new block. Okay. So this, as soon as this person added it, it will be copied in this person's computer, and this person's computer. Okay. And at the same time, this dark green. So this person added a dark green block, and it was added in 1, 2, 3 in all these people's computer. So now, as you can see that this blue block and green block are now in conflicting mode. That is, this green block will tell the this computer that please add the green block, and this person will tell no, you please add the blue block. So there is actually a conflict, as you can see. So what the blockchain does here is it does not add any block inside the blockchain. In fact, it keeps the two blocks, that is one second. So as you can see here, the two-person, that is, it forms two subnetwork. So imagine this as two subnetworks. Okay. So what happens is this subnetwork has a green block and this subnetwork has a blue block. So both of these blocks won't be added to the network, but instead they will be kept aside. Okay. So this green block is now kept aside and this blue block is also kept aside. So, okay. So now, as you can see, if you count the numbers having the green block that is kept aside of them is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here it is 4. Okay, so we obviously know that 6 is greater than 4, which means that there is 6 computers having the same computational power and 4 computers having the same computational power. So this subnetwork that is having the green block that is kept aside will have a more probability of getting a new block added inside them first. Okay, since they have more computational resources power, the probability of getting a new block added inside them will be more rather than this blue block. So suppose a new black block was added by this person inside the computer. So what will happen is now this green block and this black block will be taken, this both block, okay, this green block and this black block. Ignore this blue block. This green block and black block will be taken and appended inside the main blockchain that was present before. Okay, I hope everyone understood this fact. Whenever the new block comes, both the blocks are kept aside until and unless a new block is added, and in whichever computer the new block is added, both the blocks are taken and added. And the remaining block, that is the one that was not added inside the blockchain, this block is called as orphaned block. Orphaned block. Okay. Sorry for the handwriting. I'm actually using the mouse. Okay, so yeah. So this blue block is called as the orphaned block, and now you might be wondering, so what will happen to the data that is present inside it? The data is also important, right? It should not be like thrown away, right? Thrown away. So what happens is whenever the next block comes, that is after this black block, whenever the next block comes, so all these data that is present inside it will be appended in this block and it will be added inside the blockchain. So the data is not getting wasted, but the blockchain, the miner's resources, his time, his electricity, and everything are getting wasted. That is for sure. And there is a huge of conflict and like discrepancy that why the miner has to face this problem, and it is all of that issues are there. But yeah, remember that this block is going to get like discarded, it is orphaned, and all the data that is present will be added in the next block. I hope everyone understood this, and if you didn't at any point, you can ask me, or else I'll continue. So, does anyone has any doubt here in competing chains or anything? No? Okay, so I'll just move ahead then. Okay, so Okay, so smart contracts are nothing but self-executing contracts containing the terms and conditions. That is, uh, you all must be seeing the terms and conditions every time you are downloading some software, right? So this is nothing but the terms and conditions of an agreement among the peers. So this smart contract is a code in which all the agreements, that is the like each and every terms and conditions for an agreement that is happening between the two parties will be written inside the smart contract. For example, suppose if I'm a shop owner and I have a website for my own shop. So in that, so all the products that are present inside my shop will be under my ownership. Okay, so all the products inside my shop that are in the website, that is shown in the website, will be under my ownership. So as soon as someone comes and buys the product, the ownership is now transferred from me to that person, and the amount of transaction will be transferred from his account to my account. So this is actually the agreement that is happening. Uh, that is actually coded in the smart contract. This is one example, and also as you can see in the picture here, the smart contract is actually removing the need for the banks. So after the smart contracts, so no need for banks to actually control and like see all our transactions that is happening. And yeah, so the next thing about smart contract is the programming language that we are writing on it. So the programming languages widely used are Solidity and Serpent. Okay, so Solidity is a high level programming language, and it is actually a mix of mix of Java, C++, and JavaScript. It is actually very easy language, and once you actually start doing coding in it, then you will understand it, how easy it is. And yeah, so let me show you a simple smart contract. This is a simple uh, smart contract code snippet. Okay, so as everyone knows, must have used SC, right? In SPA, everyone must have read the C programming. So in that, we actually specify the header file called as hash include stdio.h, stdio, right? So everyone remembers this stdio package, right? What it does is it tells the code that we can use the terminal for taking the input and output, right? This header file just specifies that we can take input and output. We can write those functions. So this pragma solidity, this statement, as you can see, caret 0.4.0, this is nothing but specifying what all functionalities of the Solidity programming language we can use inside our code. Okay, so this statement is nothing but that. It is telling us the version. The version specifies all the functionalities. Now comes the contract. One second. Yeah. So the contract keyword is nothing but similar to that of a class. If you have used class, everyone might have come across the Java, right? So imagine this contract to be similar to that of class. Actually, it is more or less same, but we are using here contract keyword instead of the class keyword. And this is the class variable. You can call it as a class variable for now. And the function is nothing but telling that whatever this is a function, and the function name, the parameters, accessibility, public is its accessibility. It can be viewed anywhere inside the contract. And similarly function name get accessibility, and here you have to, in this Solidity programming language, you have to actually mention that you are going to return something. So you have to type this returns command with the parameter that you are going to return. So this is one thing. So then you return this. So this is nothing but a getter and setter code that I demonstrated for now. I hope everyone understood this simple Solidity code that is mentioned, that is shown here. So if yes, then thank you everyone who joined today and stayed till the end. And yeah, staying till the end actually matters, not joining, but staying till the end matters. And hope you enjoyed and learned a lot today. And if you have any queries, now is the time to ask them. Harsh.
Yes, Anand, you can stop sharing my screen, your screen. I'll share mine. I'll
Yeah.
show them slides. Okay. So is my screen visible, Anand?
Yeah, it's
Great. So people, just quickly go to slido.com. One of us will put the link in the chat, slido.com, and type the code 684. Once you type the code, you should see a poll. You can ask questions, ask us doubts, give us suggestions. And if you guys want a hands-on coding session, like this was a very heavy theoretical session. We learned a lot, but there wasn't any hands-on. So if you guys would like Anand to tell us more about the coding part and making an actual contract, then tell us here. So for this, you need to go to slido.com, slido.com, and type the code 684. You should see a question there, and you can put your doubts in there. So you guys say yes, we need a hands-on session. Okay, Anand, you know what to do. We'll keep until a
yeah,
week or
but
two.
yeah,
We'll
we'll take a hands-on session, but some after some time. Okay.
sure, like, for sure. So most of the people do want a hands-on session. We'll plan one in November, and we'll get all the content ready. It takes a little bit of time. So we'll keep you guys posted. Just stay in the group.
There is a question called as what is the minimum level of security
All right.
required for creation of a block? So there is actually no security is the minimum security. So if you that is actually the answer. But if you want some security, then you can actually put a hashing algorithm inside it. It will act as a unique fingerprint for that block. So that would be like a simple basic security. That would be actually a basic security. If you have any other further questions, you can ask.
Okay, great. We'll keep the screen open for 2 more minutes. If any of you guys have any doubts or suggestions, put them in here, or else we'll close our session. Okay, great. We'll close the session for today.